Good afternoon. I'm Zach Camario with the Alabama Society of CPAs, and I would like to welcome you all to our Auburn University Interview Skills Workshop. This workshop is brought to you by ASCPA, BMSS, ITAC Solutions, and Jackson Thornton. In just a few minutes, you'll hear from Charles Boffman with ITAC Solutions and Megan Carter with BMSS. They're going to help give you the confidence and knowledge you need to ensure that your next interview is a success. That is, if you put the tools that they give you today to good use. Before I turn it over to Charles, I want to briefly tell you a little bit about ASCPA. We are the member service organization for CPAs in Alabama. So in your case, we're here to help you along your journey to becoming CPAs, which includes providing you with educational resources, discounts on all CPA review providers, free networking opportunities with CPAs and other professionals, and timely news to help you stay current with the ever-evolving changes in the accounting profession. Once you get licensed, we have a whole new set of resources that we can provide, but we won't get into that today. In order to attain these free resources, you need to sign up for free student membership with AICPA and ASCPA. And I'll drop that link in the chat box in just a minute. To get us started, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Charles Boffman. He is the Chief Administrative Officer at ITAC Solutions, which is a staffing and recruiting firm based in Birmingham. Explaining what Charles does for ITAC would depend on the person you ask. To some, he's the HR guy or the ops guy. Over time, his role has evolved along with the company. As the company's integrator, Charles works with the leadership team to carry out the vision of the partners, holding the team accountable, kind of like cat herding, and beating the drum on their 20-mile march. From mowing lawns and working at Froyo Shop to the seat he's in today, every job that Charles has had has involved some role of service, which is probably why he sees everything he does professionally as an opportunity to serve. No matter what he has done in his career, his goal has always been to make life a little bit more enjoyable and rewarding for the people around him. Charles holds a bachelor degree in accounting and is a certified HR professional through the Human Resources Certification Institute and the Society for Human Resource Management. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Charles. Charles, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
All right, welcome everybody. I love having the opportunity to connect with everyone and talk about something that is so near and dear to my heart, and that is helping people figure out how to land the job of their dreams. And I think that you guys are infinitely more prepared for that than I was when I was in college and getting out of school. There's a lot of focus on that, and you're very fortunate to have professors that are truly interested in seeing you find that right place for you. And in the business that we're in, we certainly see that there are individuals who are my age, which we aren't going to call out, and who still haven't figured that out. So anything that you can do to set yourself on the right path now will help you exponentially as you grow in your career. So this is really, my piece is just talking about standing out in the crowd. And my experience in getting to work with the society and talking with students is that oftentimes you don't realize that your story is unique and that there is a way that you can stand out among your peers, from your peers. So you're going into accounting. My undergrad was in accounting. What you may not realize is that what you're really going into is you're entering the interview process is sales. And your ability to sell will greatly dictate the seat that's offered to you. And the thing that you're selling is the product that you know the best, and that's yourself. So being able to articulate who you are and what drives you, what your why is incredibly important to any employer. So you really just want to start off with a focus on your goal. And your goal in selling to your employer or to a potential employer, or anybody, guys, if you think about every interaction that you have the opportunity to leave people in a positive state of mind. So leaving every interaction with each other, with your professors, with people who are interviewing you, and they end that conversation with you, and they think, "Wow, that was engaging. That was meaningful in some way. I learned something about somebody else, or I learned something about myself even." So you have to create interest for the other person so that they're interested in learning more about you. And I think that the key to that is authentically connecting with people. So in your interview process, when you're trying to sell, you want to connect with a person. And the only way to do that is to try to find those connections, those commonalities, versus pushing your agenda in the conversation. And a lot of that will require some self-introspection there and also some research. But to eventually land the role that you want with your employer, use your selling skills, because we are all in sales. Your professors use their selling skills to convince you to put their phones away while they are lecturing. And in this wonderful world that we're in, where we are using technology, sometimes it's even more difficult just to make sure that you have that connectivity that's going on. And your friends probably use their influencing skills to persuade you to, I don't know, stay up late, go out, do something. Just fill in the blank there. But every job, regardless, has that element of selling. So I know this is not necessarily an interactive process or conversation, and I will just share with you, when we're thinking about sales, I mean, there are a lot of words that come to mind when people think about salespeople, right? Are all of them positive? No, probably not. Most of the research involved with the psychology behind sales and selling shows that the number one word that people think of when it comes to salespeople is pushy. They're pushy people. They're annoying people. They are manipulative people. The word sleazy comes to mind. And then a lot of times people just say yuck. So there's this negative connotation about selling. And what we have to do is kind of work past that to actually be thinking about the qualities of great salespeople. So if any of you interacted with somebody who's a great salesperson, is there somebody in your family that maybe is a great salesperson? Yeah. And for me, in my job at ITAC, I get people who call and ask for our business. Whether it's wanting us to buy their phone system, or maybe it's the job board Career Builder or LinkedIn, and they want us to spend tens of thousands of dollars with them. For me, what distinguishes a great salesperson from somebody who has an agenda is that the great salesperson never reveals their agenda to me. The conversation that person has with me is what I call a seek to understand conversation, where their interest lies strictly in my needs. And everything that we talk about is trying to work toward a solution to meet my needs. And the great salesperson already knows their product or service well enough that they can speak to my needs and how they can help. And from time to time, a great salesperson will conclude that they may not have the best product or service for our needs. And I can promise you that that's the person I'm going to refer to other companies, to my peers and other organizations, because I think that their interest is my best interest. So let's transition that to you, right? You must know yourself. You must know what I call your why and be able to speak to that. And you really want to have a clear understanding of the job opportunity that's being discussed with you, that you're pursuing, and who that employer is. Almost every employer has customers, right? So if it's a customer or a client, Megan, you have customers, you have internal customers. Yeah. So I have internal customers. Like every employee that works at iTech Solutions is my internal customer. So as I'm interviewing candidates for jobs at iTech, I have to be thinking about whether or not that person that I'm interviewing is going to be a good fit and they're going to make my internal customer happy, maybe take a little bit of stress off their plate, off of them. That's my goal. So during your interview, especially when you're interviewing at this point in your career, you probably don't have a whole lot of experience that you'll be able to speak to using your technical expertise and knowledge, right? So your interviewers are probably interviewing or assessing your soft skills, which includes your communication skills and your ability to connect or to relate, because that's incredibly important. So thinking about your audience, I spoke about myself. So iTech Solutions, we're a third party. From time to time, Garfield Murphy may have a need for someone, and they'll contact iTech Solutions and ask us to help them find somebody. But we are a third party, and so we're not necessarily armed with all the information that that our person at Barfield might have. They might be able to speak a lot to, here are the personality types of people on the team, and for us, we may get a list of requirements. So they need somebody who has a certain type of experience, who has a certain kind of availability. So as a third party, if you are sending your resume to a staffing firm, for example, know that that third party audience that's going to get your resume is probably going to be more rigid as they review your resume, because they have a checklist that they want to go by. And they just want to know that when they send your resume to their client, in this example, my client would be Megan, maybe at Barfield, that she's going to say, Charles heard my requirements, and so I'm willing to talk to this person. But I don't know how flexible she is on those requirements. And because I don't know that, I'm going to be really rigid about who I send. So how does that apply? Your resume really needs to speak to the requirements for the position and speak to how you meet that, right? So that's knowing your audience and understanding them. Megan is probably really interested in making sure she's weeding out applicants that aren't going to meet the requirements, because she wants to present the select few candidates that are going to impress the hiring manager. And the hiring manager is the person who's probably, that's a different audience. That person is closest to the pain points. They need somebody who's going to jump in immediately, somebody who's going to fold in seamlessly to the existing team. They need relief, but not at the cost of disruption. So when they're interviewing you, they're thinking about those things. And when you have the opportunity to sit in front of a partner, firm partners are like any senior executive, and they're thinking about the potential that they see in the candidate. They're not really worried about the day-to-day, because that's not going to be their interaction, but is this someone who's going to be able to move the needle for the firm? Is this somebody who has the capacity to be a future leader in the firm? Do they have the drive and the desire to build a book of business? So if you're able to sell that partner on yourself as a candidate, is there potential there that you're going to be able to sell to their clients and to get more business? And they're always worried about the culture. Always, always. So are you going to align with the firm's values? Are you going to be a contributor to the culture? And ultimately, in this profession, you absolutely have to prove that you're trustworthy, credible and trustworthy. So thinking about those things in your audiences, be able to also speak to your drivers, your whys, right? So why did you choose the profession of accounting? What does it mean to you? How do you feel that the profession of accounting is relevant? What will you be able to give back? And what motivates you to do more than what's expected and gives you a real sense of accomplishment? I always like to ask people what their gold star is. So how do you know what your gold star is that makes you smile, that compels you to give a little bit more next time? And make sure you're able to speak to your distinctions. What are the results? What are the things that you quantify? And what's the impact that you've had? What are your leadership experiences? Because we all are looking for people to be leaders. Leadership is not about a job title. So you can be a leader at any point in your career. How well do you communicate? And then where is the demand? What are the unique values? What are the uniques that you offer that will distinguish you from everyone else as you interview for your next career position?
Charles, are these all questions that you have asked candidates? These are just things that you're having them reflect on. Okay. So do you ask the gold star question?
I do, absolutely.
And does that throw people off?
It does.
I'm kind of like, I don't know what I would say to that.
Yeah, because some people say the gold star is just being able to check everything off their list at the end of the day, and that's what makes them happiest. And then other people say that it's just that feedback that they get in the hallway from somebody. They get the recognition, and I think everybody has a different gold star. And so, if I'm interviewing somebody for ITAC and they tell me they want to be able to check everything off their list at the end of the day, I'm like, bless your heart. That's never going to happen in this industry. Ever. So I need to think about you for a different role, because building relationships is probably the best gold star for people in this industry.
But that's where having awareness surrounding the job description of what they're actually interviewing for, they can kind of tailor their answer to what they know the needs of the customer are, or the needs of the interviewer are.
Absolutely. And Colby, I think that that's really important to just briefly speak to, because if they're so focused, anybody who's so focused on speaking to that, but realizing that it doesn't actually align authentically with who they are, man, that's going to play out poorly in the end, because there's going to be a different expectation the employer has compared to what the employee is able to deliver on. That's extra work. Work is work, but man, be authentic.
Right, because then they might be interviewing for a job they don't really want and they're not suited for in the end.
Yes, and that means that if they got the offer, then somebody's going to be unhappy about 6 weeks in. And the sad reality is there may be somebody else who should have gotten that offer, which would be the perfect person for that seat. Yep. All right. So I'm going to pass it back to Zach.
That was great, Charles. Thank you. So next up, we have Megan, who is with BMSS. Megan graduated from University of Alabama in 2015 and completed her Master of Accounting from Auburn in 2016 and obtained her CPA. She worked for a Big Four accounting firm in Atlanta in their audit department for 2 years before transferring to their campus recruiting team. In 2020, Megan moved home to Birmingham, where she lives with her husband, who's also a CPA at BMSS. And they have a 9-month-old black lab named Sully. Megan joined the BMSS team in December and has loved every minute of it. So let me turn it over to Megan.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. I feel like I'm already off on a bad foot with you guys with Alabama undergrad, but I finished it up at Auburn. So you'll have to forgive me. My husband is a huge Auburn fan. So I feel like I'm at Auburn more than I'm in Tuscaloosa. So I love Auburn as well. But I'm excited to be with y'all today. And as Zach mentioned, I have been in your shoes. I'm a little bit older than you guys, but I went through accounting at Alabama, went through the recruiting process, and have kind of been sitting where y'all are sitting, ready to get the process going, not really knowing where to start. So just applaud you guys for joining things like this to just kind of understand how you can present yourself better, because as you know, it's a competitive world out there. So anything that you can do to make yourself more competitive will definitely pay off. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you guys about your resumes and your social media accounts, and then talk to you about how you guys can be competitive as you head into your interviews and the recruiting process as a whole. So you all probably heard a million times from Colby, your resume is your first impression on a firm. And so when you guys are walking around Meet the Firms or any career fair handing out your resume, that is really what a company sees you on paper firsthand. So no, it's obvious, but make sure that it's up to date, that your graduation date is the correct graduation date. Read over it a couple times, have one of your friends read over it for any spelling errors. Believe it or not, as Zach mentioned, I do recruiting for BMSS. And I get resumes all the time that the email address is wrong, whether it be at edu versus .com or something like that, or that their graduation date that's on their resume is wrong. Now, completely understand that your graduation date could change and fluctuate as different life events occur, but to the best of your knowledge, make sure that that graduation date is correct, that your email address is correct, and that you have a phone number on there where we can reach you. A lot of times, if I get a resume that I find is impressive, I'll just shoot an email to the student and say, hey, can we jump on a call? I'd love to hear more about your interest, and I'll give you a call at the number on your resume. So that's when I learned that some of the emails are wrong, because the emails will bounce back, and then I have no other way of connecting with the student. So just those seem obvious, but you could get to typing real quick and make an error. So just make sure you're keeping up with that. Make sure you're bragging on yourself. This is a way for you guys to stand out. When we come to Meet the Firms, we're talking to a lot of students, and we're going back and we're reviewing those resumes, and we're thinking back on our conversations that we had with you. So make sure that you're calling out all of y'all's accomplishments and really bragging on yourself. It feels uncomfortable. I've been there, but you really want to make sure that all your hard work is paying off. Another thing I like to tell students is show that you're involved inside the classroom as well as outside the classroom. So you want to be well-rounded. We would rather take a student with a 3.5 GPA that has involvement on campus, within the school business, and also maybe something external outside of school, than take a 4.0 student that all they ever do is study. So we want you guys to be well-rounded, because we want our employees to be well-rounded and involved in the community, and just not all only about work. Work is important, but there's also other things in life, and that kind of go into work in the business world. And so we want to make sure that you guys are well-rounded. So make sure that you're bringing that to life on your resume as well. So social media, I know y'all's generation is very, very familiar with social media, as is mine, but make sure that you have a LinkedIn profile and that you keep it up to date. So in the instance that a professional wants to jog their memory or wants to learn a little bit more about you, I go to LinkedIn all the time to look up a student, and the second I see their face, I remember a conversation that we had. So just make sure that you're keeping that up to date, that you're adding a picture, and that you're just really giving it some attention. I don't expect it to be huge, drawn out, hours of hours put into it, but just at least have a presence on social media. And also be proud of your accomplishments. So make sure that you're updating that when you get an internship, so that the world can see where you're interning and the experience you're gaining. Just keep that up to date as well. So there's also other social media platforms like the Instagram, the Facebook, the Snapchats. I'm sure there's others that I'm too old to know about, but just make sure that when you're having those profiles, and even if you're setting them to private, that people do have access to those accounts. Everything that you put online and everything that really you put out there represents your personal brand. And you might think that a Snapchat is there for 5 seconds and gone, but it could come back. I feel like y'all are like, Mom, stop talking to me. I've heard this from my parents, but I truly mean it. Any Instagram post that you put up or anything like that, just make sure you're thinking twice about putting it up there. I always like to say, my grandmother saw this on the front page of the news the next day. Would I be embarrassed or would I be proud? So, Colby, it looks like you're about to say something.
I have a real world example to share
Let's
about
hear
this. I mean, I was at lunch today. Well, there's two. I was at lunch today with some colleagues, and we were talking about, this is somebody that works at Auburn. And I was like, y'all, have you seen her Facebook profile picture? She is laid out. She did a 30th birthday photo shoot where she's laid out on the beach, tipping up a champagne bottle, wearing a bikini with a sign behind her of all these risque things she likes to do. And I'm like, what is she doing? Like, why? This is so unprofessional. Then there was a girl a couple of years ago that went through recruiting. Megan, you may have encountered her, but she was like an influencer, and all of her pictures on her Instagram, because when you're an influencer, you have to be able to be followed, but all of them were like really high cut bathing suits. Like, it just made me like really scared for her. So just think about stuff like that. Like, don't let your priority of being fun with your friends or being an influencer impede your ability to have a professional image, because people are looking. Y'all know I'm a stalker. I make no bones about that. I will find you. So just keep it tight, guys.
Yep. And we by no means want our professionals to be posting the same thing, not have their own opinions. We know that social media is yours, and then you can express whatever opinions and you can post whatever you want, but just keep in mind that is your personal brand. And when you join a company, you become a representative of them, and they don't want to take on a person that has a bad personal brand and be tied to something like that. So y'all just keep that in mind as the social media keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I can't imagine what's going to be around in 10 years, but okay, let's talk a little bit about how you can be competitive. So you all are probably thinking about internships. And as you can imagine, especially where the world is today, accounting, not so much, but things are just so competitive, and it's only going to get more competitive. So how can you make yourself stand out? And this goes a little bit what Charles mentioned as well, but just make sure that you're showing your interest to the companies that you're applying for. So you want to make sure that when you're walking into an interview, you know about the company. If the person interviewing you asks you a question of, tell me a little bit about what you know about our company, which can happen. And so you don't want to be caught thinking, you're a public accounting firm located here. Like, you want to have a little bit more to say about it. Well, I don't expect anybody that comes to interviews with us to be an expert at BMSS and know more than me. I do want you to be a little bit familiar, because that shows me that, hey, they're really interested in the firm. And while they want to learn more from me, they also have done their research and look at the stuff that's online as well. Research your interviewer. So it's a double-edged sword. I say this in the sense of, if you're going to interview with a partner of the firm, make sure that you understand that they're a partner, meaning they own the firm, meaning they're very high up. You don't want to ask them, what position are you, when you walk into an interview. You also don't want to come to an interview having stalked their LinkedIn profile, asking them about how their kid did in the case study that they competed in last week. That is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for the interviewer. So that's why I said it's a double-edged sword. I want you to research your interviewer and your companies and to know and be prepared, but don't go crazy with it by any means.
You don't need to get a private investigator to find out what they were up to last weekend.
Yep. I've had interviewers.
Saw you coming out of Trader Joe's.
Right.
What's your favorite?
I've had interviewers say to me, like, oh, they asked me a very specific question about XYZ that was on my LinkedIn from like years ago. And
I think LinkedIn's fair game. I think going beyond that is probably, anything that's not on the firm website or LinkedIn. We don't need to be doing a paid intelligence search.
Very true. And then I can't say this enough, know what you're applying for. You're most likely going to get a question about, tell me why you want this job or what made you interested in this position. And we know when they're cookie cutter answers versus when it's something that you're truly, truly interested in. So make sure you understand what you're applying for. And if you don't understand it before the interview, get with your recruiter and just ask any questions that help you to understand it, but don't walk into an interview blind. Practice. I cannot say this enough. It feels awkward to go talk to your roommate and say, listen to this interview question, give me some feedback. If you think that's uncomfortable, record yourself on your computer and listen back to what you say. And the only way you're going to get better is through practice. You can find sample interview questions on Google. It's not hard to find them. You will sometimes hear some of the questions that you find on Google in an interview. But make sure you're comfortable with answering those questions with all sides of your resume. So a lot of times I've been in interviews where you ask a couple different questions of, why are you qualified for this job? Or tell me about a time when you had to work on your time management skills. And students are continuously pulling from the same example that's on their resume. This goes back to the well-rounded. Make sure that you guys can speak to everything on your resume and really bring it to life in an interview, and bring to life different leadership opportunities or experiences that you've had. Don't just keep hitting home that one leadership experience that you had, because we want to hear more about the other stuff on your resume. Know where you're going. So I am guilty of this. I can ramble and fill the time for as many minutes as you need me to, but in an interview, make sure your answer is valuable. So interviews aren't really long. 30 minutes sounds like a really long time, but you blink and it's over. So you may get a question that makes you think for a second. It's okay to take a minute and say, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. Gather your thoughts and then present your response, and really get to the point in the meat of the response quickly. Don't just ramble and drag along your interviewer. Know what you'll wear. So this sounds silly, but it's one less thing that you have to worry about day of. When I was back in school, we used to have to trek to the career center to do interviews, and it always, without fail, was 100 degrees that day. It's like a mile walk. So I would always make sure that I threw in different shoes, that I got there a little bit earlier so that I could cool down before. Just make sure that you're prepared. You'll know what you'll wear, that there's nothing that you can control that would go astray during the day. You don't need to add another thing to your plate day of your interview. And then my last point is just know the plays of your interview. So who are you meeting? What are you interviewing for? Just remember that everybody that you're meeting with are important. So a lot of times when you're doing formal interviewers, you're likely meeting with more senior professionals within a firm. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't have an interview with somebody that's more of like a staff senior level, a little bit younger. They're important too. Those senior members of the firm were once a staff and worked their way up. And so they're important as well. A lot of times when you're going for an interview, they'll have greeters waiting for you just to kind of answer any questions that you have. And those are important interactions as well. They want to get to know you as well. They represent the company. They want to see if you'll be a good fit as well. So don't think that only the partners are the ones with the decisions, or only the executives are the ones that make the decision. A lot of times they'll ask for opinions of the younger people that have interacted with you as well. So we want to make sure that, to Charles's point, that you're a good fit for the culture, that it's a good two-way street fit, and that involves more than just one 30-minute interview with a partner or something like that. So like I mentioned at the beginning, you guys are killing it, doing all that you can right now, especially in a virtual world, just to get as many tips and tricks as possible to make you stand out. But would encourage you to continue it and practice. Just if you interview and don't get something, don't let it deter you from going after it again. Just use it as a learning experience, and move on to the next one. That is all I had, Zach. I think we're going to open it up for questions now. If anybody had any questions, is that right?
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Megan or Charles or Colby a question.
Well, I have a question to start off, because Megan, you kind of hit on this, and a lot of the things that you talked about are kind of the more traditional interview environment, which I still think that some firms have a greeter situation if they have a more concerted effort. But I guess what are some things that you've seen are potential pitfalls of a virtual interview, or what are ways that a student has really been able to stand out and convey themselves potentially even better than they could being across the desk from somebody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I can answer it, and then Charles, I'm sure you have some good answers as well. It feels like it's very obvious, but when you're in a virtual setting, all you really have is from your head up. So you want to be presentable, want to make sure that you have a good background. So you don't want something distracting in the background. I've been on an interview with somebody and they're in the fraternity house and there's like beer cans hanging from the ceiling, which like, you do you in your free time, but I don't need that in the back of your interview. That says to me that this isn't important to you, that you didn't take the effort to go find an area that's more professional, it's just another thing that you're doing in your day. So those are two things that right off the bat are going to make your interviewer either be impressed or be not impressed. So virtual interviewing, I mean, we know it's not as comfortable as in person for us as well. You don't have the whole stand up, shake hands, walk into a room. But just what would be some of my tips? Treat it like as much of a real interview as you can. I feel like you guys are getting even more comfortable with virtual because we've been at it for a year now. So just treat it as serious as you can, and really prepare for it. Make sure that you have some things that are on your resume that you can add more color to, that you're going to bring to light, and just throw away that it's awkward. We all know it's awkward. It's been awkward for a year. It's going to be less comfortable than being in person is, but it's what we have right now. And so just take it with a grain of salt and go with it. Charles, do you have anything from your standpoint?
A couple of things that we have seen not work well is that we'll have candidates who kind of take the news anchor approach. So everything that is within camera is professional and buttoned up, but then something happens and then they had to jump up. And so you're like, oh, wait, they're in sweatpants. It's like, oh, okay. So, I get that you want to be comfortable, but go ahead and wear pants. I'll just say it that way. Just wear pants. Also, it's a good idea to have a backup plan if something happens. So I'm sitting in my office, internet's working, that's fantastic. But if I've got an interview, then I probably also need to make sure that I can use my phone if I need to grab that pretty quickly to transfer over because something goes down. Anything that you can do to kind of see around the corner what issues might come up and then prepare for those in advance. But I can honestly say, Megan, I've never seen beer cans hanging from the ceiling in an interview.
It was the first. I haven't seen it since.
Critters running through people's backgrounds. I mean, that happens all the time. It's just kind of understandable. You'll see a cat or a dog or whatever. And know that you'll get some sense of personality of the person that's interviewing you based on how they respond to those things too, right? And there's a certain level of grace that we all have to extend to each other when we're doing this. However, there's also an expectation in how we respond to the unplanned. So
yeah, I love that, because I think there's so many things that can go crazy in the day of a CPA that I think it's somewhat of a behavioral situation to see how they react to something that's potentially a flustering factor. But one thing I mentioned to my students in class yesterday is confirming their understanding of where they need to be and when for this interview, because it's almost a little more unnerving to not have to physically show up somewhere and be like, oh my gosh, do I have the right link? Or am I going to be in the right time zone? Because so many of our recruiters are on Eastern time. And so they might communicate a time that the interview is that's on Eastern, but not realizing we're on Central. And so, I think it falls on the student to reconfirm, okay, so this is on Zoom, this is at this time, and I'm meeting with this person. So that way they know that they're at least able to do the interview.
Just to add, lighting is also very important. I know you can go on Amazon now and buy the little light rings that'll clip on your computer. So if you have poor lighting in your apartment or your home, that might be a solid option for you to invest in a little computer light ring. Okay. Well, guys, we're going to begin breaking out into the breakout rooms unless anyone has any other questions. All right, and we're back. So if we can start with Charles, and then we'll go to the Jackson Thornton crew, and then over to Megan. So if you each want to provide feedback to kind of recap how everyone did, that would be great. And then we can wrap everything up and say our goodbyes.
Yeah, I think overall, guys, great job. Jonathan, out of the gate, we experienced the, oh no, what happens when technology goes bad? And so he was very calm through the entire process of trying to figure that out. Really appreciate that. And of course, my conversation with Tori dropped because of my power flicker. So had some great experiences there, and everybody seemed to just handle that flawlessly. I probably panicked more than they did. Good job in answering your questions. I mean, I feel like you were thoughtful in giving your answers. None of your answers were canned responses. So speaking to that being authentic, that need for authenticity, well done there. Everybody answered pretty quickly too. So no circling the airport, which I think is something that Megan was speaking to, making sure that you answer the question and move off that and onto the next topic. Good job, guys.
All right, Amy.
Yeah, everyone did great. It was so nice talking with everyone. Everyone seemed really genuine, and their personality really was able to shine through, which is important. And people had some good questions prepared, so that's always good to have. And I think that our sessions went great. I'm glad we had this opportunity.
And did your counterpart leave us?
I think she might have. So
okay. Megan, you're up.
Awesome. I get the worst part of the line. Y'all took all my answers, but I think I chatted with everybody that I interviewed and shared. Just felt like y'all were very honest, which was awesome. I'm able to see your personality more when you're honest with your responses and you're not giving me the cookie cutter responses. I think all three of y'all did a really good job at bringing your resume to life. So it wasn't, I asked all of y'all about something on your resume, and it wasn't like, let me repeat the bullets that are in my resume. It was like, let me tell you in addition to what's on my resume. So that's really what the interviewers are trying to get at when they're asking you the questions about the stuff that's on their resume. They can read, they know what you wrote down. They just want to know more of it. And I felt like in all three of our meetings, something that you brought up that wasn't on your resume was very applicable to the accounting profession. And we kind of talked through that at the end. So y'all did really great. And it was awesome talking to y'all.
And I just quickly want to thank y'all for doing this for our students. And it is a recorded session, so we will make it available to students who were not able to attend, because there's a lot of great tips and perspectives offered. So we appreciate y'all spending time with us today.
Yes. And I want to praise all of you for taking the initiative to sign up for this voluntary event. Even though if Colby might have strong-armed you just a little bit, we still appreciate you joining us. It's these very steps that will help set you apart from other candidates that are interviewing for the same position. And it's really important for each of us to remember that we're never too experienced to learn something new or fine-tune some of our skills or knowledge base. And I want to leave you with a quote that I heard last year that I think everyone can apply to their daily life. And it's, we keep going until we get it right. And then we keep going until we can't get it wrong. And I know I said this last year at our interview skills workshop, but it's one of my favorite quotes. And it's just a reminder that, to perfect everything. So when it comes to interviewing, keep going until you get it right. And then keep going until you know you can't get it wrong. So that's what I want to leave you with. And I thank you all for joining us. And if there's anything else, don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know how we can help you.